Being a startup, fundraising mode will always hurt you, but it's a necessary thing. Funding never equates to success, guys. That means nothing. It's the users and the revenue and the growth rate. Been doing startups for almost 20 years now. Any experience I have, I feel like I can help any founders who are looking to start their own company. Did Y Combinator twice for anyone who doesn't know, and building my second startup now, justpaid.ai. Are you thinking about doing a startup, or I guess looking for a job in a startup or anything like that? I guess we can kick things off. So specifically for anyone who's this, Y Combinator is an accelerator and they help fund companies. The first time I did Y Combinator, it was more intimate. I'm not going to lie. It was way less chaotic in the sense of there was 42 companies in my batch in 2011. The founder of Y Combinator was still there. So Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston, they were the two first believers. And their thesis was originally, let's poach people from college during a summer program in Boston and give them a little bit of money. It was about $15,000 to $20,000. So they started doing that in 2005. They lived in Boston. They would basically put flyers up at Harvard. It was a summer curriculum, to see if a startup could get their company off the ground. From 2005 to 2011, when I got into Y Combinator 2010, it was very much driven by them. So it was Jessica Livingston, who was, I would say, more the heart of it, where she would see who was a good founder and understand how they operated. And then you had Paul Graham, who was a Harvard alumni, and he had way more of a technical bend, and he did a startup, so he had a successful exit. Jessica was going into venture capital. She wanted to be a venture capitalist. Paul Graham was a entrepreneur. So between the two of them, they got together and just drove Y Combinator forward. In the early days, it was Sequoia Capital. They had good relationships with Sequoia Capital and others. And what that did is it drove them to go to Silicon Valley. So they bought this in Mountain View. They actually had this one office. It was a really big building, but not so big. They got it and basically cleared it out and just said, we're going to invest, $15,000 to $20,000 in some founders at a rapid pace. And they moved to Silicon Valley simply because Boston didn't have the investors there. And part of their thesis was, don't go where the entrepreneurs are, go to where the investors are. Investors don't move. I hate to say it. Investors kind of situate where they're at. If you have a billionaire or a millionaire, they tend to stay where they're at. Entrepreneurs have to come to them. Paul and Jessica realized that, and that's where Sequoia Capital was, which was at the time was the best investor in the world. They moved out to Silicon Valley, created a relationship with Sequoia Capital. And in 2011, they started to ramp up the batches. So 2010, they were small. 2009, they were smaller. 2008, they were smaller. 2007, they were smaller. But then 2011, when I got it, it was only 42 companies. Now, the founders had very little software. They had Hacker News. So Hacker News was probably their most successful thing, which drove traffic. So there was no Reddit. There was no places where there were communities. So people went to Hacker News, which was Y Combinator's site. And this was kind of a hack. They were able to get all the developers and all the hackers and everyone in the world to go to their website, Hacker News, and see all this stuff happening about Y Combinator. They also created a relationship with back in 2011, there was a news outlet called TechCrunch. They're still big. I don't know if they're as big as they were, but TechCrunch was the thing back in 2011. It was the place to launch. And it was amazing if you got launched there. So Y Combinator had a relationship with all the reporters. They had a relationship with Sequoia Capital. They bought this building. It was true believer founders going into Y Combinator back then. It was not, you weren't getting the amount of capital you are now. Now you get $500,000 getting into Y Combinator. Back then you got $20,000. And that was enough to pay for a 3-month trial period, their internship summer program. It was let's try a summer program startup, give them, $15,000. If they work, they work. If they don't, they don't. The thesis back then was give them a small amount of money, try it out, see if it works, see if they could do it. If it doesn't, shut the company down. So it was less security for the founder because it was not a lot of money. So my company went into Y Combinator, got a little bit of money. Why did I do it back then? Because there was a vibe happening in Y Combinator that wasn't happening anywhere else. And why did we apply because of that vibe. It was the first founder first, like true investor. They were founder friendly. They understood how hard startups are. Most startups fail. They understood like the psychology of a founder. They understood like the dynamics of like if you have multiple co-founders. They understood give people a chance in life. A lot of people are not given chances. So they were doing rapid chances to 42 companies, 20K, 20K, 15K, 17K. That was very unheard of in the past. But there was no software. So like back then it was the partners. You got to meet any partner you wanted. You could have, they called it office hours, like what I'm doing. And you got to do it as much as you wanted with them. And you would meet weekly for 3 months. And then after that, you could still meet with them. So like the benefit back then was all the partners were there. So my partners back then were Sam Altman, now founded OpenAI, runs Y Combinator now. Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, Jessica Livingston, Harj Tagger, Justin Kahn. He was part there, in and out. And Paul Buchheit, the creator of Gmail. Those are the people who like helped me in my first company. And they would just kind of like all meet once a week there. And it had a very much like, I'd call it like a homey vibe where like Paul Graham would make chili. He'd make a big vat of chili every week. And then he would like give everybody chili. And it was a really nice, intimate environment. Now, what happened was, Paul Graham was doing it for so long, he realized it's hard to scale this. Let me get someone like Sam Altman to help me scale this. He pulled in Sam Altman. Sam Altman started to view it as like, I want to invest in more companies, go broader. But how do you do that when you only have so many partners? So they started to, the word sharding means like you break apart partner groups. So they would have 5 partners for this amount of companies, 5 partners for this amount of companies, 5 partners for this amount of companies. So they started to shard a little bit more. And then they started to invest in the software more. So now, like coming full circle, it's partner groups. You're allowed like a group, like, so you're assigned a partner that believes in you. And then basically there's a few other partners that help you to build your company. And then you're assigned some other founders to work with in like a little pod that just basically push and check in with each other weekly. And you create really good relationships. I like life-changing relationships out of that because you go through those struggles together. But back then it was all the companies. It was very chaotic and I kind of just knew a few people. Now it's very software driven where as a founder, I could find somebody in this network of, it's like thousands of founders. I could like find the person I need for like a special expertise. An example would be like email delivery. I know a lot of people in email delivery because of Y Combinator and like the community. And I'm like, how do I get these emails like right and sending them out and that sort of thing? It's hard to like find that stuff when you're not in a community like that. Again, like it's tomato, it's the same entity. I do like the thesis of Y Combinator where you're as a partner allowed to pick your companies. So like if you get an email from a Y Combinator partner and they say they'd like to interview you, they're the one who makes the decision, not Gary Tan alone or not, Nicholas, who's another partner alone. The partner you're on the Zoom call with within a 10-minute Zoom makes the decision on that call if they want to invest in you. So it's very, very quick. But they're also doing this at a rapid pace that they kind of detect who they want in Y Combinator. I leverage Y Combinator quite a bit. I don't know if other founders do. Other founders recoil and just go into like build mode. Neither is wrong. If you make your company successful, it doesn't matter how you build it. But now you're also getting a different type of founder who looks at it and says, I get $500,000. I can quit my job. Back then, you didn't get that. You got a crazier person that just will take $20,000 and attempt something. But now it's way more strategic where you get a lot of money. And that thesis is if they give you all of this money, you think more clearly for like the long game as a founder. And, a lot of these companies do take time. On average, like I would say an average company takes like 10 years to build. So like $500,000, 2 founders, you can go for 5 years on that burn rate, right? Like if they're taking $50,000 each. So that's a long time you can like experiment and test and see what's going to work. It's a different entity today than it was back then. But I would say the culture is the same where they invest in people that are just like working on something really cool and the people are really friendly. Do you need a product? No. Do you need revenue? No. Do you need a good like team? Yes. They look at the founders more than anything and look at like past behavior to see like, can this team execute, right? And what's past behavior? I don't know. Maybe you went to MIT. Maybe you built something and had like $10,000 in revenue. Or maybe you got 3 co-founders together and like you guys like are vibing really well. You should see the way that Verbo tried to get into Y Combinator. It was really silly. Like they had a really fun way of getting into Y Combinator. 3 founders, very like happy-go-lucky, but they invested in them and they also invested in Airbnb. So there is also this interesting phenomenon that happens in Y Combinator. Well, they'll invest in many competitors. So if you think that, oh, I want to do a company like Reddit with AI, they'll still invest in it because they want to broaden it and give everybody a chance. And they don't know what's going to win. So you don't know what you don't know. And they realize that. So they invest in many companies very quickly. I mean, it's risk versus reward. You don't want to over leverage yourself to the point where you have to quit your own startup. Some founders give up because they basically become destitute. It creates such a stress in their life that they quit their startup. And that is problematic. So like risk versus reward, if you front the money and you can't work on your startup, it's not worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Like you don't want to gamble. You want to go for the long haul, if that makes sense. Do you need investors? Like there has to be a way, and you just have to think through this. Like there's got to be something else you can do to get some users without having to front the money or get, the requirements that you need. If you have the money and you can still run the company for 3 years or 2 years or a year and a half and you want to front the money, I think that's a different scenario where it's okay. But if it's going to stress you out in 6 months, you're putting yourself in a bad situation where you don't even have users yet. But if you can go a year and a half and front the money, then do that. And, really talk to your co-founder also and be like, risk versus reward, right? I mean, that's the thing. So like you're risking way more, but the reward is you might get users and what you need out of it. I think it doesn't matter. It's about survival. I've heard of founders who had no investors. I've heard of founders who have lots of investors. The thing is, you don't want the investors to block the accelerator. I would be cautious. I would just find good angels and just get their money that are hyper supportive and know what you're doing in your plan. And, plans change. They have to be dynamic, and good investors are dynamic on their feet, and they'll be like, okay, you're switching gears and you're going to do this instead. You're pivoting and you're doing this. Okay. Or you want this accelerator didn't happen, but you're getting into this thing, or there's 5 more angels you want to bring in, they kind of work with you. So like if you take money, just make sure the angels are all on board with like supporting you for the long haul. If you raised $5 million and then applied to Y Combinator would still let you in. They want their terms. If the investors before that are okay with it, just do it. There's a bunch of other ones like South Park Commons. They're really great also. There's a lot of great accelerators out there. Some accelerators might be a little bit more sensitive, but you can justify, hey, we want you as an accelerator because of your network, or you have this expertise, or, whatever else they might be offering. But I haven't heard of a company, at least specifically from Y Combinator, being blocked, like getting in. Do you need to do an accelerator? The answer is no, you don't. And the reason why you don't need an accelerator, they didn't exist before. Like at the end of the day, you want to survive, right? And it's about finding the right people that will support you. If you're in Silicon Valley, you will run into really successful people. The thing that will kill you is not going up to those people at events, hiding and just building and not getting feedback. The end of the day, what really makes a startup, it's the users and revenue. That's it. Like an accelerator is great. That's not going to make you successful. It's the users and the revenue. So like a lot of people equate like fundraising to success. It's not. It's just like it's a stepping stone in a journey towards success, which is revenue and users. If you want to go the path of not going into an accelerator, don't do it, because there are strings attached with an accelerator. You are committing yourself to like having investors and like, they have what they want. They are envisioning what they want for the company. I would say for anyone in Silicon Valley that is not in an accelerator or wants to move to Silicon Valley, I would say go to one event a week for a year and just network with everyone there and try to see who would be a good co-founder, who would be good employees, who would be good investors. There's different pools of like founders in different areas. You have to move around the valley. Like some are in, San Francisco, there's really good investors. San Francisco, some of the best AI engineers are there. San Francisco, some of the best AI founders are there. You move to other places like down in the Bay, some of the best traditional investors are here, you kind of have to move around in the networks, and conferences are a great way to do that, but just be bold and go up to people. If you don't go up to anyone in person, like that actually is a detriment. And I see a lot of founders, they just hide and they don't socialize when they need to. Again, I lived in Silicon Valley since 2011. I have been bold, and I've gone up to billionaires. I've spoken to, famous actors. Why did I do that? This is your chance. And these are weird moments of like opportunity where like you'll see somebody and you'll see they're just sitting there. I'll give you a perfect example where I missed an opportunity, and this is a true story. I lived 10 minutes away from where the founders of Google live. One day I'm walking past a coffee shop, and Sergey Brin is sitting there drinking coffee with his dog. Why didn't I say hi? I just wasn't in the right mindset. I also wasn't sure if he would like be okay, just some random founder walking up to him, but opportunity missed, just like that. I'm just saying, like, they come around and then they're gone, those opportunities. Other times I've grabbed the opportunity and I immediately like took advantage of it, and I was like, opportunity, like amazing opportunities happen. What Y Combinator does specifically is they take a month and a half or a month and 3 weeks, and they make you build nonstop. And they're looking at getting the revenue up and the users up before demo day. And then Y Combinator scrambles to bring thousands of investors into a room. So they're doing that part of it for you while you're building the product. So the value that they're creating is like, how do we get 2,000 investors in a room that are likely to invest in some of the companies while you're building the product? So it does actively hurt the founder to do fundraising. It hurts a company directly in a bad way because you're not building product and you're not getting customers. It is actually really horrible. So what Y Combinator does is they say, you build the product, we find the investors. And then they smash it together. So being a startup, fundraising mode will always hurt you, but it's a necessary thing that has to be done. So again, if you're a solo founder, you're going to have like only so much time. Revenue always helps fundraising, and users always helps fundraising. So like building product and showing something is really important. But there's a time when you want to do that fundraise. It might take, the reality is like 2 months to close, and it becomes a full-time job where you literally are doing research. You're seeing who's available, who actively is an active investor. It's not easy to pull out this information either. With AI, it changes the game. So it probably is easier than it's ever been. But for me, before AI, it was an opaque thing. There were things like PitchBook. PitchBook is a database, and it has all the activity, and they try to get it as accurate as possible. So you could see in Silicon Valley how many investors there are, who's the most active, what investors invest in like what you're building, and what investors invest in tech or AI or this or that. PitchBook has a really nice way to lay that out. Again, PitchBook is expensive. If you're a student or you were a student, you can probably get PitchBook for free. Figure out how to get access to PitchBook. Look at TechCrunch, look at other databases, look at activity of investors. And it's not easy. Talk to a lot of friends who got investment and say, can you make an intro to one investor? Or can you give me advice on my pitch deck? Or how am I doing on revenue? Can you look at my product? And I do that a lot. Like in this startup and my last startup, I would just cycle through and just get feedback all of the time from all these different people that were willing to give the time for free. It was great. And then, out of nowhere, we got lucky, right time, right place. Y Combinator was open to it, and they were our first investor in my first startup. But we went 2 years with no investors in that company. We had users, we had revenue, and we had built a machine from grit, sweat, and tears. And me not taking, my salary was really, really low. But with Y Combinator, we had users, we had revenue. Was it a lot? No. It wasn't like what everybody thinks they need. Like we were just determined. And I think they felt that from two founders that were in it for 2 years. They took a bet on us. Startups are very grueling, is what I'm saying, is it's not for the faint of heart. But investors will not make your company successful. Funding never equates to success, guys. I'm just letting you know that. You could raise $100 million and think you're successful. That means nothing. It's the users and the revenue and the growth rate. If you can get users, revenue, and your growth rate is high, say 10% a month, 25% a year, that compounds, boom, boom, boom. And then you've got this crazy business. And there are a lot of founders who did it with no or very few investors, and they have these like mega billion-dollar companies. You probably have never heard of her, Judy Faulkner. She's a billionaire, and she took only her family round. She had a few family members invest, and then she created a multi-billion-dollar company, and she's a billionaire now. And I'm like, that they don't talk about those stories. That it took her 30 years, but it's a multi-billion-dollar, like hyperly established organization with really smart people. And the answer is we always followed the law. So like whatever was required from the law, that we just followed that. You had to like operate the way that we wanted to operate. Did it cost money? Yes. Did we spend the money? Yes. Was it expensive? Yes. Did it slow us down? Yes. But that was like the business we were in. So I felt like it was like the cost of doing business. I don't think there's a right answer, just moving it all forward. So like that means always keeping the relationship hot. How do you push them forward? How do you make them feel comfortable? Building a good relationship with them on the strategic partner side that will help your business like change and become successful. On the investor side, there's different mindsets and different ways to think about it. Some people say do not talk to any investors until you are ready to fundraise. That's one camp. Another camp is talk to investors always. I think there's a gray area, and I live in that gray area where I talk to a few investors here and there. And why do I do that? I'm one, getting a pulse on the industry, two, feeling out an investor. Three, it's also like creating a relationship where they see the progress of the company and they may trust me more. Can it actively hurt your company? Yes. Because if they see the progress and they're not happy with it, they won't invest. But if you say, hey, now we have $2 million more in revenue and it's been 3 months, that makes you look better. If you say we don't have any revenue, it's been 5 months, it hurts you in some ways. But there's no right answer. I think moving it all forward and spinning all of those at the same time help you. But don't over-index on investors until you're ready to fundraise. I wouldn't talk to all investors all of the time. Talk to one a month. Talk to two a month. Now, the strategic partnership, work on that, because that's going to change your company's life. It's going to change everything if they really buy in and like trust you and like care, and it changes your company. Because like if they say we want this partnership, let's sign an agreement, you've just literally gotten what you needed, and the investors are just a bonus. It's an inflection point in your company where like there's another person validating the company and pricing the company. But the partnership right now is way more valuable than talking to 25 investors this month. Unless you wanted to do the fundraise. If you're in fundraising mode, which means like we need to raise $2 million and I want to do it in 3 months, that is fundraising mode. But then it's hurting your partnership because you're really not focusing on getting that partnership off the ground. I mean, timing is everything, and putting pressure on them is what you need to do. But it's like balancing plates. It's like, how do I get them to do what I need to get that partnership in place? And then how much time should I spend on, with investors? I don't have a right answer there. That's a tough one. But I think like trust your gut. You know what you need to do, and play your cards right. But if the partnership falls apart, be prepared. And this is where like my mind always goes, is never put all your eggs in one basket. If this partnership doesn't happen, have a backup plan. I would say play your cards right. You can't control the other company. Ask them what do they need, and just be like, how can I help? And just make it a really positive experience for them where they feel like you're a partner that's aligning with them. Use the words like, we're in this together. We want to make it a win-win. It's a negotiation. Like there's a lot of really good books on negotiation and, on like win-win situations where you both win as partners together. And I think understanding that psychology and getting in their head and being like, what value can I add without being combative, right? Like always make it a win-win and talk about like the value together and how you're going to build something great together. And, what can you give them to get them aligned? Maybe it's like advisor shares. Maybe it's rev share. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just like having their name on your website and just continually like pushing them leads. Maybe it's giving them all of the revenue. There are win-win situations where like you get what you need and then they get what they need. And then it's like, 2 + 2 = whatever, 10. And you both like become really, really successful. I'll give you an example, like OpenAI. OpenAI needed servers. Microsoft had servers. Microsoft understood if we give them credits for these servers, it's almost like an investment into OpenAI. Let's take that risk, give them all this server space. And if this pans out, we essentially like have the AI space, and we've just launched the AI space. So it's like, for them, there was a win-win where they really aligned themselves with OpenAI to like go after Google, to go after, all of these other guys who are kind of AI-ish companies. And it worked out for them. I mean, there's a lot of examples like the iPhone, Google puts Google search on the iPhone and the iPhone becomes better. Facebook understood music. Facebook in the early days was like integrating Spotify in like crazy. And it created a really weird experience and unique experience where Spotify got all these users and Facebook got more users, and it was like a win-win for them. So I think having a deep conversation with them and just be open-minded, like just hear them out and be like, how do I make this a win-win for you? I'm open-minded. What can we do to make this work together? And if they say something that's unsettling, just nod, process, think about it. Just say, I'll get back to you. And what's unsettling? Something you don't want to hear. Like, can you do X, Y, and Z for us? And it's like, oh, that's a headache, or that's going to hurt my company. But then you come back and you kind of process it, and then, but also be very proactive in making it like a good experience for them. And there's an art, like there's no science behind negotiation. It's an art form. It's like, how do I like get what I need, and how do they get what they need together? There's a few books out there that are pretty big. I've skimmed through a lot of different negotiation books and like what creates a win-win situation. But when you're combative and you put pressure in a bad way, that's a win-lose. So like you have to remember we're in it together. Flip the script in your head and be like, what are they thinking? What would make them feel really comfortable, like working closer together and signing a deal? When you do that, it becomes really, really, people get really aligned. And I think that's a really, really good situation for both parties. I tend to think that way with like, even our customers at my company Just Paid. I'm like, what do they need? How can I provide that? I need to check in with them. Is this working for them? If it's not, I need to fix it. Like, and customers are partners, but also like what you're talking about is like a true partnership. What do they need? And you may not know. So I think it's like going in with questions and just being like, how can we make this work? I really need to move this forward. Just understanding their perspective on it. And even if they don't answer it obviously or like straight to you, but you'll feel what they're needing and you can come up with creative ideas. Anyone who doesn't know Notebook LM, it's just a really good tool. I think you guys should just take a look and just Google search it. It's a tool for like voice conversation. So I could load in really complex documents or anything in there. And then just like you basically can learn and process something in an audible way. So I could like hit load conversation here, and then it creates like an audible of like anything you need. I love it. I'm going to use Notebook LM way more. It's basically an offering from Google, guys, that's free. So why not use it? Just go to notebooklm.google.com for deeper analysis of stuff. But I mean, it applies also to fintech, and it applies to healthcare. It applies to looking for a job. Like if someone gives you a job offer, upload it into it and then ask it like, what should I do? So Notebook LM is actually a really good tool. I candidly haven't used it enough. I need to use it way more. I've been using Anthropic and ChatGPT, but Notebook LM, guys, is like awesome.